Now, I hear some of you saying, but surely you can't reduce someone's academic performance to a single number. I couldn't agree more. Many academics are very averse to the use of metrics, and I do understand their concerns very well. Metrics should never be the only way to compare academics or universities. However, I do think that the automatic assumption that metrics disadvantage the social sciences and humanities is incorrect. That really depends on the data sources and metrics that are used. And my concern is that by rejecting metrics altogether, the social sciences and humanities, and to a lesser extent engineering, might place themselves in a weaker position vis-à-vis the dominant disciplines of the sciences and the life sciences. Academics and academic managers in these disciplines might think that if you can't measure something, it can be disregarded, or they might think that the unwillingness to engage with metrics just hides weaker performance. I would also argue that relying on peer review is not necessarily a better option. Yes, the ideal version of peer review, which would involve informed, dedicated, unbiased experts with plenty of time, is absolutely better than the reductionist version of metrics such as the Web of Science or the H-index. However, an inclusive version of metrics such as Google Scholar H-index corrected for disciplinary differences that I discussed might well work out better than the reality of peer review, because most peer review is done by semi-experts under time pressure. They often take shortcuts in their evaluation by relying on the prestige of the outlet or the institutional affiliation. And even if they don't do this consciously, it will operate on a subconscious level. In one study designed to test these biases, published manuscripts were resubmitted with an unknown university as affiliation, and most of these manuscripts were rejected even though they had been accepted before. Moreover, peer review is also subject to gender, ethnic, language and disciplinary biases, with manuscripts of white, male, native English-speaking academics generally getting better evaluations independent of quality. In terms of disciplines, there's also evidence that any discipline with a focus on humans as opposed to objects receives lower evaluations. Even within disciplines, this bias is replicated. Moreover, any disciplines or journals with articles that are heavily quantitative rather than qualitative, or theory focused rather than applied, tend to be evaluated higher. So let's forget this notion that peer review is the gold standard, and let's not create two opposing camps, metrics versus peer review. Metrics are by no means perfect, but they're not inherently evil either. It's all about how they are used, and metrics and peer review are both subject to all sorts of biases. However, the difference is that peer review is usually done by a handful of individuals who in many cases are part of the privileged group and are likely to reinforce existing bias. Metrics are co-created or if you want crowdsourced, to use a more fashionable term, from a larger group of individuals that includes those in less privileged positions.